Welcome to the Cinematic Spotlight. Today, we are going to turn back the pages of beautiful yet poignant memories regarding a work that has become legendary. In 1985, the film Anne of Green Gables officially premiered, creating a fever not only in Canada, but spreading powerfully across the globe. The story of the orphan girl with fiery red hair, soaring imagination, and a kind heart became an unforgettable part of the memories of an entire generation. The film was not only a resounding commercial success, but also considered an artistic masterpiece portraying the beauty of human connection and poetic nature. But behind those classic characters, behind the smiles and tears on the screen, were actors with very distinct fates. 39 years have passed, and time has etched different marks upon their lives. Some continued to shine brilliantly. Some chose a quiet path, and there were those who had to stop their journey in tragedy and pain. Join me as we look back at the tumultuous journey, peeling back the layers of glamour to touch the real lives of the cast that created the soul of Anne of Green Gables. Colleen Dewhurst as Marilla Cuthbert. In Anne of Green Gables, Colleen Dewhurst excellently embodied Marilla Cuthbert, a woman with a stern, austere exterior, but hiding deep within a warm heart and boundless love for Anne. Her gaze, at once strict and forgiving, became the soul of Green Gables, moving millions of viewers to tears. At the age of 61. Back then, Colleen's acting had reached a level of maturity, authenticity, and haunting depths. However, Colleen Dewhurst's real life was a sad melody with heartbreaking low notes. Born in 1924 in Montreal, she grew up lacking affection as her family broke apart, forcing her to mature in loneliness. When she entered the arts and sought love as salvation, she instead crashed into marital tragedies. 2 marriages and divorces with actor George C. Scott were days of disappointment, arguments, and violence, turning her private life into a battlefield with no winner. Before the emotional wounds could heal, she had to face physical pain. In her final years, Colleen was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Tragically, her religious beliefs led her to refuse modern medical treatments, accepting the physical torture of the disease each day. The woman who once stood proudly on stage now writhed in the darkness of illness, fighting alone yet trying to maintain a strong exterior. She lived, loved, and endured pain until the very end, and then that tumultuous journey had to come to a stop. On August 22, 1991, Colleen Dewhurst breathed her last at her home, closing 67 years of a stormy life. Her passing left a huge void in the arts, but the legacy of a stern yet loving Marilla Cuthbert will remain immortal forever. Megan follows as Anne Shirley. Overcoming more than 3,000 candidates to take the role of Anne Shirley at just 17 years old, Megan Follows truly became the icon of a generation. With fiery red hair, bright sparkling eyes, and a resilient spirit, she breathed life into the character brilliantly Megan's. Anne was not just a role, but the embodiment of youth dreams and romance. Megan Follows was born in 1968 into a family with a rich artistic tradition in Toronto. It seemed she had a perfect launchpad, but the fame that came too early turned her youth into a storm that was both brilliant and suffocating. After the film's success, Megan married photographer Christopher Porter in 1991 and had 2 children. But happiness was fleeting. The marriage fell apart after just 5 years, leaving her to shoulder the role of a single mother alone. Work pressure combined with the massive shadow of Anne Shirley pushed her into persistent psychological crises. Megan once admitted to feeling trapped between public expectations and naked reality. She struggled to redefine herself, striving to escape the gilded cage of her defining role. She found salvation in directing and producing, stepping up to affirm herself as a versatile artist, not just the Anne of years past. Today, at the age of 57, Megan Follows is still diligently dedicating herself to the arts as an actress and director. Her journey is a testament to the ceaseless effort to overcome adversity and one's own shadow. Though time has imprinted its marks on her face, the fire of resilience still burns in her eyes, continuing to inspire women who are finding themselves again after brokenness. Richard Farnsworth as Matthew Cuthbert. If Marilla was the cool head, then Matthew Cuthbert was the warm heart of Green Gables. At age 65, Richard Farnsworth portrayed a gentle, quiet uncle, Matthew, whose eyes were always filled with love for Anne. The departure of the character Matthew in the film took away the tears of so many, and Farnsworth's acting was so authentic that people believed he poured his heart and soul into that role. Few know that behind that gentle exterior was a life full of wind and dust. Born in 1920, Richard Farnsworth came from a background as a stuntman. Having spent over 30 years risking his life in dangerous action scenes, it seemed his life would be peaceful with his wife Margaret Hill after nearly half a century together. But in 1985, the same year the film was released, his wife passed away, dealing a fatal blow to the old artist's spirit. Loneliness engulfed him right at the peak of fame. The tragedy did not stop there. In 1999, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, metastasized to his bones. Brutal physical pain tortured him every day, leaving the man who once heroically rode horses and shot guns exhausted. He realized the disease was incurable and did not want his final days to be hopeless endurance. And so the story of the gentle Matthew had a tragic ending in real life. On October 6, 2000, Richard Farnsworth chose to end his pain with a gunshot at his ranch in New Mexico. He departed at the age of 80, leaving infinite sorrow for fans, but it was also a release for a human life that had endured too much loss and pain. Patricia Hamilton as Rachel Lynde. Patricia Hamilton brought to the audience a colorful Rachel Lynde, the gossipy, blunt, yet incredibly kind-hearted neighbor. At the age of 47, she created a character both humorous and lovable, becoming an indispensable piece of Avonlea. Born in 1937, Patricia Hamilton was an icon of the Canadian stage, but behind the booming voice and sharp eyes of the character Rachel was a woman with a heart full of scars. Her marriage to actor Leslie Carlson ended quickly, leaving her alone to raise her son Ben. Carlson's loneliness piled up as she had to endure the pain of a miscarriage, a tragedy that haunted her throughout her life. She threw herself into work as a way to forget the pain, but that excessive devotion eroded her health. In her old age, chronic arthritis robbed her of the ability to stand on stage, pushing her away from the spotlight she considered her reason for living. The woman who once brought laughter to the audience now faced long, silent nights and physical pain. The journey of Mrs. Rachel Lynde came to a stop on April 30th, 2023, just 3 days after her 86th birthday. She passed away in a nursing home, closing a life dedicated to the arts but also full of private sorrows that could not be shared. Jonathan Crombie as Gilbert Blythe. In the memories of millions of young girls, Jonathan Crombie was the perfect first love. Embodying Gilbert Blythe at age 19, he brought the image of a smart, gentle, and faithful young man. Gilbert's love for Anne was beautiful like a fairy tale, and Jonathan was the prince stepping out from the pages of the book. However, contrary to the perfect happiness on film, Jonathan Crombie's real life was a quiet, low note. Born in 1966 into a prestigious family with a father who was the mayor of Toronto, Jonathan chose a secluded lifestyle. He did not marry, had no children, and lived for many years in loneliness. It wasn't until he was 40 that he publicly came out as gay, but the years of hiding himself before that left gaps in his soul that were hard to fill. His career after the role of Gilbert was also not very smooth. The massive shadow of the dream boy made him struggle to find new roles, and his career gradually plateaued. He lived quietly, walking alone in bustling New York, facing self-doubt and financial pressure. It seemed the role of Gilbert had applied a cruel contrast to his life on film. He had all the love, but in real life he was solitary on the journey to find happiness. Yet that journey stopped far too abruptly. On April 15, 2015, Jonathan Crombie died suddenly in New York due to a brain hemorrhage at just 48 years old. That news broke the hearts of those who loved Anne and Gilbert. His family decided to donate his organs, turning this tragedy into a final act of humanity, just like the way Gilbert Blythe lived a life full of compassion. Cedric Smith as Reverend Allen. Cedric Smith brought peace to the film through the role of Reverend Allen. A virtuous and compassionate man, his calm image on film made the audience believe that in real life, he also had such a fulfilling life. However, reality was much crueler. Born in 1943 in England, Cedric grew up with the insecurity of an immigrant and constant loneliness. He turned to folk music to fill the void in his soul. The greatest tragedy of his life struck regarding love and family. According to shared information, he had to go through extreme pain when his beloved wife fell seriously ill in the 90s. The process of caregiving and the subsequent loss or breakdown pushed him into the abyss of despair and alcohol. A glorious career could not hide the wounds of the heart, causing the relationship between him and his children to gradually drift apart. The man who was once a spiritual pillar on film became weak and shattered before fate. Currently, at the age of 82, in the context of 2025, Cedric Smith lives a reclusive life, rarely appearing in public. He is still silently fighting the ghosts of the past. Proof that sometimes the person who brings light to others is the one sinking into their own darkness. Marilyn Lightstone as Miss Muriel Stacy. Marilyn Lightstone, with the role of the modern and enthusiastic teacher Muriel Stacy, became the model of innovation in Avonlea. At age 45 back then, she brought a fresh breeze, championing freedom and knowledge. In real life, Marilyn was born in 1940 into a Jewish family with strict expectations. She sought liberation in art, but deep down remained the loneliness of a child lacking understanding. Her first broken marriage left her with scars hard to heal, making her always skeptical about happiness and self-worth. Despite achieving much success in her career, she still felt empty. Instead of sinking into tragedy, Marilyn chose to sublimate her pain into painting, photography, and voice acting. Today, at the age of 84, she is still diligently creative and living with her longtime partner Moses Namer. Although sad memories have never completely faded, she has learned to live with them, turning her life into a multicolored painting of resilience. Charmian King as Aunt Josephine Barry. Charmian King wonderfully transformed into Aunt Josephine Barry, the wealthy, strict woman who was eventually conquered by Anne's sincerity. This role was an interesting highlight, showing the subtle psychological transformation of a lonely, elderly person finding the joy of living. However, the real life of Charmian King, born in 1925, lacked those joys. Growing up in a family with harsh discipline, she learned to suppress her emotions from a young age. Although she married actor Gordon Pinsent and had a child, she always felt lonely in her own home. Differences in personality and life pressures created invisible distances that could not be bridged. Illness and a long-term smoking habit turned her final years into a battle with emphysema. She had to struggle to maintain the image of a proud artist while her body was collapsing day by day. Charmian King passed away on January 6, 2007 in Toronto at the age of 81. She departed after serious complications from lung disease, leaving regret for a talent who dedicated her whole life to art, but received much bitterness in her private life. Schuyler Grant Schuyler as Diana Barry. Schuyler Grant, or Schuyler, took on the role of Diana Barry, Anne's kindred spirit, gentle and loyal when she was just 15 years old. Her innocent beauty and natural acting successfully portrayed the most beautiful friendship on screen. Born in 1971 in California, Schuyler had a massive background as the grandniece of screen legend Katharine Hepburn. This was both a launchpad and a heavy pressure. She grew up amidst ceaseless expectations and comparisons. Her private life also went through many waves, with a broken marriage after having 2 daughters, leaving deep emotional wounds. Standing at the crossroads of her career and family pressure, Schuyler had to struggle internally. Finally, she chose to withdraw from the aura of fame, turning to yoga as a method to save her soul. Psychological trauma and physical injuries from the past forced her to practice through pain to find balance again. Today, at the age of 53, Schuyler Grant has left the silver screen and become a yoga instructor in New York. She chose a peaceful life, staying away from the pressure of fame and family power. Though no longer appearing in films, the peace she has found now is the happy ending for the real-life Diana Barry. Jackie Burroughs as Mrs. Amelia Evans. Jackie Burroughs, at age 46, when filming though only appearing in the small role of Amelia Evans, left a strong impression with her. Sharp eyes and unique personality. Her character reflected a part of the eccentric nature and complex inner world of herself in real life. Born in 1939 in England and immigrating to Canada, Jackie's childhood was days of feeling lost and insecure. She turned to art to relieve loneliness, but her private life was a series of sad days. A fleeting marriage that lasted only 2 years left her a single mother struggling with feelings of failure and the burden of making a living. Chronic loneliness pushed her to cigarettes for relief, a habit that gradually destroyed her health. Throughout the final years of her life, she lived in a struggle between the desire to dedicate herself to the stage and her health, which was increasingly deteriorating due to stomach cancer. That talented woman always shone before the lens, but was solitary in the darkness of disease. Her journey closed on September 22, 2011 in Toronto. Jackie Burroughs passed away at the age of 71, leaving behind a massive artistic fortune, but heartbreakingly modest material assets. Proof of an artist's life lived and died for the craft while forgetting herself.